Well, good morning, friends. The American Dream. That's what we're talking about today. According to Investopedia, the American Dream is the belief that anyone, regardless of where they were born or what class they were born into, can attain their own version of success in a society in which upward mobility is possible for everyone. The American Dream is believed to be achieved through sacrifice, risk taking, hard work, rather than by chance. Is that true? And is that what we should be teaching our kids? Well, good morning, family. It's another Freedom Friday, and we are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after this hour with us than you were when we began. As always, Sharif El-Mekki and I come together on Fridays to learn in peace, although sometimes I choose violence. Good morning, brother Sharif. How you doing?
Good, man. Good to see you. Glad to be here. I think this is such an important topic. Big weekend. Hey, this is actually April, I think, was the 60th anniversary of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But, because of the pandemic and mayhem, they postponed it. So I think they're celebrating it this weekend. So happy birthday to those stalwarts, those leaders, those youth activists who changed the world, were committed to changing the world and did so many things to further the cause through SNCC. Happy 60th birthday. And then today is the 55th birthday of the launching of that pro-Black, pro-humanity group, Black Panther Party of Self-Defense. Busy weekend here in Philly. The National Association of Alumni for Black Panther Party is having their celebration here in Philly. And excited to partake in some of the activities and a conference.
We should be hearing and seeing all kinds of communications around these important dates. But like a month ago, I think it hit me that the SNCC anniversary was coming up. And I don't see a lot of talk about the anniversary. I wonder if we have just gotten fatigue about memorializing things. Like if we're just done with it, we're kind of like, or cancel Christmas,
or we're just like so distracted with memorializing the other stuff, right? I think we're hopping on to responding to certain things, but then things that are just like absolute pillars or like significant markers in the Black blueprint. We have to keep lifting that up and keep revisiting it. And saying that, kind of having that Sankofa moment of like, okay, how do we build from here? What do we need to learn? So yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that.
Building on what you just said, the Black Blueprint. There are famous books in our libraries around the Black Blueprint. Matter of fact, there's one that's called, the Blueprint for Black Power, which is a very important, very thick, not easy to digest, requires a little bit of a challenge of yourself to get through it all. But the book has been written multiple times on what we could be doing to prepare ourselves for a free future, to be free, even if we're not today, to be free in the future. Now, this is Freedom Friday, so we should be talking about things that make us free. People listening and watching, is it Amos Wilson who did do you know the Blueprint for Black Power? I believe it's Amos, Dr. Wilson.
That sounds right.
Please, people, look this book up. There's also a book called Powernomics that might be a good recommendation for folks to take a look if you want to look for the blueprint. And in education, there's a book by, I believe it's by Ronald Ferguson at Harvard, around the blueprint. It's called The Formula. And in his book, The Formula, he studies families, different kinds of families that have all succeeded, Black children, from like the projects to Harvard is one of his stories that he tells in there. And him and another researcher took the key lessons out of the educational journey of those students who came out of, blighted circumstances and made it to high circumstances. So I would, suggest to take a look at The Formula. Also, our brother, Dr. Charles Cole, his book that he had that was from his dissertation work, the work that he did to become Dr. Charles Cole, was studying Black excellence out of that comes out of like the projects, people who come out of single parent homes or, circumstances where we believe that the deck is stacked against them and they still do very well. So we study them, right? What's interesting for this conversation today is we're going to talk about a couple of things: the American dream, the American reality, and what we teach our kids about agency and aspirations. And I do want to touch a little bit on something we've touched on before called the success sequence, which is the conservative remedy for all things that are wrong with Black people and poor people and people of color. They've narrowed it down to just 3 things. If you do these things, there will be no such thing as racism ever again. So I have a
magic
spell.
wand.
So yeah, magic wand. So for those of you listening and watching, I have found the remedy that gets rid of all of racism, systemic or otherwise, and reverses the tide of white supremacy and everything in history. And it's in 3 steps, 3 easy
simple steps.
It's 3 simple steps.
This should be one of those midnight infomercials. You know what I mean? 3 easy steps. You can't sleep. Watch this. 3 easy steps. $49.99.
It should be like a medicine called Negro Sil. Are you tired of white America? Do you suffer during the day with bouts of anger, rage, depression, and want to throw your coffee on people? Try Negro Sil.
Yeah. Forget the red pill. Forget the blue pill. This is a yellow pill.
This is a yellow pill, right? So here's where this came from for me. There's a pernicious, I think, or let's not even call it pernicious, a deeply misguided conservative talking point that we are teaching young people of color to be victims, that we are teaching them that the world is stacked against them, that racism is all that matters, and there's nothing that they can do to free themselves. And we are not telling them about what a great country that they live in, and that if you work hard, be nice, follow the rules, that you will succeed. The American dream, as I mentioned, I looked for different definitions, but Investopedia describes it the way I described at the open. It's the belief that anyone, regardless of where they're born or what class they're born into, can attain success in this society, and that upward mobility is possible for everyone. So, Sharif, I'll just start with, all of our questions are usually around, what should we teach our young people? That's like what we're talking about in this show all the time. So what should we teach them if we had to make a choice out of giving them an aspirational version of work hard, be nice, and you can achieve the American dream, versus what I call the American reality, which is study the numbers, look at the stats, and don't be fooled by dreams or stories, be moved by evidence and knowledge. Um, as even when that evidence and knowledge is negative, like deeply nihilistic and negative, you still take it in. Help me start with just the American dream part. What would be so wrong just teaching the American dream to kids?
Yeah, I think a part of that is, if we're talking about children being educated and being aware and being prepared and being thoughtful and problem solving, you can't be a problem solver if you don't practice problem solving. If you can't, be a critical analyst as a human being, as a citizen, if you are just in a state of dreamland, right? Dreaming conveys that your eyes are closed in some sort of way. And so if we're teaching our children to that, close your eyes and just imagine in itself that everything, I'd rather them have their eyes wide open, understand like aspirational, motivational, uh, steps, but also recognize all the landmines that are hidden and obvious, that they need to be aware of, and they need their eyes wide open. They need every sense on heightened awareness, to be able to navigate this. And I think this is a part of the reason where, folks like Malcolm said, American dream for you, American nightmare for us. And so I think it is foolish, absolutely, to teach children to dream, and do blind following, eyes closed, movement, herding, as opposed to, no, keep your eyes open, head on a swivel, and have aspirations.
Mm-hmm. Do you personally believe that if you do most things right, you're going to end up living a good life in the United States. So the American dream has some sense of truth to it, meaning go to school, get good grades, do well in school, go to college or to a tech college or do something and get a job, work hard, show up on time to your job. Just if you just basically follow those simple rules, chances are you're going to do really well in the United States. I mean, we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Maybe if you did that exact same thing in parts of India, that exact same dream would not work for you. There's no such thing as the Indian dream, apparently. But in a capitalist country like the United States, if you just really kind of stick to those basics, you should be better off. Do you believe that yourself?
The reason why I have trouble like just buying into that, we know that it is a caste system, particularly around race and wealth, right? And so that child who's in surrounded by the barbed wires of policies that are racist, that is doesn't play out the same way for someone that's in this safe zone. And so if it's just a statement like, "Oh, just work hard, be nice." Like, yes, there are things that we should, no matter where we are, what our circumstances, we should try to do. That's how I would raise my children. That's how I speak to other people's children. But I think it's incredulous just to tell that part of the story, because I think at some point it's like ignore the barbed wire. You just do you, and that's never good enough. I think that leads to people saying like, you know what, forgetting that they were actually born on home plate, third base at worst, and then telling someone else who's not even out of the dugout yet, all you got to do is work hard. Like that's all I did. I
Hmm.
worked hard. You were born
Hmm.
on home plate. You fell over. You're actually drunk and fell over, and that's how you made it here. And I think it starts to feed that hard-heartedness that we see in so many policies. That there's an assumption that folks aren't on this moving turnbuckle, the reverse moving in reverse, and they just make these assumptions. And so I think it's just real short-sighted to only think that that's the only thing. Because, and you and I know many folks that we grew up with that were working hard, actually, that they're
Hmm.
doing things, and things did not work out how you would expect them if it was just a neutral statement. And nothing in America is a neutral statement.
Hmm. I mean, that's a T-shirt by itself. Nothing in America is a neutral statement. That
Mm,
couldn't be more true. Mark Gaskin says, "Embrace the fact that it's a marketing campaign, and you can appreciate the game a little better, or at
mhm.
least navigate it." Elaine Wells says, "We aren't operating from a level playing field!" Exclamation point. Reparations on YouTube. Now, reparations, you got to give me a real name because I love your comments most of the time, and I would love to call you by your name. Um, um,
She just reminded reparations. How you doing?
right,
Reparations.
right. Um, she gave like the two eyes on some of our statements.
Mhm.
Cynthia Rose says American dream is foolishness for Black folks, just period. Um, I do feel like it is part of the the conservative talking point about us being negative all the time, or just making everything about race. I think it sidesteps the fact that Black Americans have been some of the most believing people in the history of the country. Believing that we would get somewhere or could be somewhere is what caused us to jumpstart entire movements around making an equal society, right? Like getting our fair share, because we knew access to like the GI Bill and access to education and access to healthcare and access to equal employment, opportunity employment. Those are all things. By the way, America, I have to say this every week. You're welcome if you are living the dream based upon equal opportunities in employment or equal opportunities in housing or in the economy or in labor or any of those things, if you or your family or your grandparents have benefited from those things, thank a Black person today. Actually find one and say, "Hey, Black person, thank you. I appreciate it."
Now
Uh,
you're gonna have a couple that are out there in these streets doing that. You know what I mean? So,
I want you to do it. I want you to do it
hey,
because
black
you know what
person, thank
short of
you.
that, you thinking all the wrong stuff about Black people. So this might be something a good today, a random act of not kindness, but generosity and of gratitude. Say, I'm thankful. First of all, I mean, let's go all the way back. Thank you for building the country. Thank you for building Congress and the White House. Thank you for actually jumpstarting the entire financial and commerce system of the United States, because without you, my Irish ass wouldn't have been able to come over here when we were starving to death in our shithole country and come over here and enjoy everything that you built. So thank you. So today should be Thank a Black Person Day, right? Like, oh, I wasn't here when there was slavery. No, you weren't, but you came afterwards and lived up on all of the benefits. Kind of like that family member who comes to Thanksgiving and don't bring nothing. That was you, right? All your people from all your shithole countries where we had to delouse your asses when we got you off the boat in Ellis Island, right? We had been deloused for years already, right? So anyways, don't get me started, but just thank a Black person today. It's Friday, be nice. Thank a Black person. Now somebody's going to get punched in the face, so let me take this back.
Tapping him on the shoulder on the L train. Hey.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Black person.
The hell? Anyways, back to the American dream. I only was making the point that we have been very believing people, for years and years and years and years. Black people believed in America and whatnot, so much so where we tried to make her better, not just for us, but for everybody. So the talking point that we don't buy the American dream is wrong. But I will say this. I live in an area of the country where not all the white folks go to college. Not all the white folks are the privileged white folks that many of you have in your cities. As a matter of fact, I have white family members where I live who work their butts off every day. I like to tell a story of a nephew on my wife's side of the family who moves 25 cows, in the middle of winter. Like he will, this happened to us on a Thanksgiving. He got up and said, well, got to go, got some stuff to do. And I asked him what he had to do. And he said he had to go move the cows, right? 25 cows by himself in Minnesota in the wintertime. And I thought to myself, what does that mean? You got to go move 25 cows in the winter, in the snow. I just don't even know what that means. My only point is to say that, on that side of the family, they are all hardworking. They're not all going to college. They are all finding a way in America to have houses, buy trucks, and have some semblance of their own version of success, right? It's not the Seattle success. It's not the urban success, but it is a way of making life. So for them, the American dream seems pretty simple. Like, no, I went to school. I didn't go to school after school. I just had to figure out something else to do. So I learned to do HVAC, or I learned to do, I'm a mechanic or something that, gives me a skill that I can earn on. And they're living pretty good, right? So if you told them that the American dream is not real, they might have some questions for you. I mean, what would you say to them? Well, first of all, why wouldn't that work for us as Black people to do what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, I think
no. And what would you say to them if they were having trouble understanding why the American dream has a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of it is entrenched in history. You mentioned some of the bills. You mentioned, some of the policies. You alluded to things like land ownership. All of these things. You're talking about inheritance. There's so many things that are just baked into past policies that continue to impact today. Just like when they say, like, oh, I wasn't around for slavery, and you say, like, yeah, but you benefit from it. Like, I wasn't around for enslavement, but we're still suffering from it. And so having that kind of deeper understanding, I think so many folks, because people are anti-critical analysis, anti-historical fact, in schools and elsewhere. This is why so many people are just so far removed. It's like a foreign concept and idea. Like, well, I did it, why can't you? And have no idea about what land ownership, what generational wealth, what passing a home to, down the line, all of those things, what that has meant and how that compound, just like you got compound interest, you have compounded misery at the same time happening for, for other folks. And I think, sometimes people, and I think when you read these old stories about enslavers, and they were always pitching this idea, like, just work hard, be respectful, and you're going to make it to the promised land. That same story is being told to children now, right? Like with some, some pretty oppressive conditions. Work hard, you'll make it to the promised land, and forgetting what are all the conditions that allow me to enslave you? And what are all the conditions now that allow me to underfund, undermine, marginalize, and then still give this this theory of the promised land, like, oh, you can make it here where I stand. I think Cole mentions a lot, Huey Newton talking about black children growing up with all this oppressive barbed wires around them, but still they're constantly being shown all these shiny objects. You can attain to own this and earn this and receive this, but they're actually not going to get there based off of what's happening now.
All right. So I'm going to be the tough one on this discussion, and you're going to be the sage. So I just want to clarify our roles. I'm going to keep beating up on the tough stuff here, and then you be the sage and help me out of it. If Black people wanted to truly be free, there's ways in which they would behave that they're not behaving right now. Okay. So let me just say that again. If Black people truly wanted to be free, there would be ways in which they would behave that they're not behaving right now. Some of those ways are in which conservatives have a field day with us, right? But some of those ways are in which, like, Malcolm would have a field day with us, right? So you can look at it from two vantage points. Conservatives will tell you, like, listen, if my kid is going to school every day and paying attention and getting good grades and passing these tests and coming home at night to a quiet house where they are expected to go in their bedroom and get their homework done, and we are talking to them in 9th grade about college, about what it's going to take for them to get their resumes beefed up so that they can get scholarships and all that, and we win because we do that, that's on you, bruh, right? So if you're not doing all that as a Black parent, whatever, that's just going to be on you, because Asian parents and white parents and Latino parents and other parents, they all got a job to do. It's a race. This is a race. It's not some collective enterprise where we all work together. No. We're not all trying to get no. I think that's probably why they called it race, right? Right? Because it's an actual race, right? To the goods and to the resources. So in conservative world, they're kind of like, well, your kids ain't behaving. Your kids ain't doing anything. You don't care when the school calls you. You're not checking the homework. You're not doing this, whatever. They can have a field day with us. On the other side, Malcolm might say, if you were a true revolutionary, here's how you would behave. It would show up in what you read, where you get your information from, where you spend your money, how you collect your dollars, where you put your children in schools, who you hand them over to teach them, blah, blah, blah. Like there would be like a revolutionary blueprint. Here's the tough, thing to say, and, beat me back on it. We're not living up to either. On either side of these fronts. So maybe we just don't want to be free.
Well, I'm glad you gave these kind of, two outlooks. I think it's always important to look at some folks that give you advice and they have deep contempt for you. And so where it's coming from, what's the source of that advice? You have to analyze. Some people are giving you advice and they have deep love for you. And that's the well that they're drawing from to give it. The folks who have deep love for you and they're holding you accountable, they're pushing back, they're setting a bar. They also spit fire. What Amir saying, spit fire into the mag is empty to the policies and the conditions that were created to have you thinking in a certain way, to have you behaving in a certain way. Where the other group, the ones that have contempt, they have no fire for the systems. They have no critical analysis of the policies. They're saying it is only you, and that is why these conditions exist in urban America and deep America, wherever there's poverty and struggle. And so I think that's the difference. So with Malcolm, even when he says like, yeah, we have to stand up, clean ourselves up, stand up as men and women and protect our children. He also had this critical thought and analysis of here are the conditions that created this. Here are the conditions that drive people mad, that have people unable to think long term because they're thinking about how do I survive in this moment. And they don't have the luxury of all this pontificating and like, oh yeah, all you have to do is, blah, 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 blah. It's like the reality of, the Black child, Black person in America is because of these conditions And they didn't disappear with the Emancipation Proclamation. It didn't disappear with that, because a paper, particularly a paper, paper that says something that's not really going to be enforced, means nothing. And so that is what he was bringing. Where the conservatives, they are, intellectually lazy. Their understanding of history and how it plays out in contemporary times is about as shallow as you can get. And so I think those are the two things. There's always a little bit of truth in whatever, but we have to analyze as far as like what the context is and what's actually happening. There's scriptures that say, hey, God won't change the condition of people until they change what's within themselves.
Woo!
And oppression is worse than slaughter. So you have to look at both of these, and these are two verses in the Quran. You have to look at both of these at the same time. Oppression is worse than slaughter, and God won't change the conditions of a people until they change what's within themselves. Not either or. It's a combination. It is a holistic view and blueprint to march and fight forward.
You just said like multiple words there. But from a biblical analysis, there's several things in there that were just striking me as, first of all, the whole thing about God helps those who help themselves, and you reap what you sow. All of that's in the Bible. In addition to lots of calls for making sure that the structures are just within society. Right, like that's also in the Bible. People will be reading one part of the Bible.
Yeah. It's like,
they're flipping through, they're looking for the thing they want. Like,
right here.
Oh, okay, I got it. Gay people are bad. Okay, yeah, let me find that other thing in there. Oh, okay, gay people are bad. It's like, bro, you keep reading the same chapter. Like, what happened? What happened to all this stuff about love and justice and everything else? You missing a few things there. We need a love and justice movement based on what you just said, but also in the book. So think about Genesis, and I don't know how this works in the Quran. So maybe you could tell me. But in the book of Genesis, the devil tells you true things to make you jack yourself up, right? So coming to people who are in an unequal system and saying to them, if you behaved better by doing these few things, you would have a better situation within the unequal society. And the truth is that's kind of true, but what they're saying is what's the lie of it is, if you do that, it will negate all of the unequalness of the society still, right? Like racism will go away if you were behaving the way that you're supposed to be behaving. And, in Genesis, the devil comes to Eve and basically says the only reason God doesn't want you to eat from the tree of the knowledge of life and death, or whatever it is, that they're forbidden from eating from, is because he knows once you have that knowledge, you'll be like him in ways like God. And there's a truth to that. But the truth is, that's kind of like saying the only reason your mom doesn't want you to touch that hot stove is because you'll understand what pain is, right? Like, well, that's true. That's probably a good reason to not do what God told you to not do, right? So I do think the devil is very smart in the Bible in always telling you something with a grain of truth to it. So, but it's actually in a context in which it's going to do you harm in the long run. That's why you should stop listening to devils in your ear. But anyways, let's just shift gears just a little bit too, because we're going to end this American dream part of the conversation and then go to American reality. So there's something called the success sequence. I said earlier that conservatives have a magic 3-step system that if you follow this 3-step system, it vanquishes everything in terms of racism, systemic inequalities, social injustices in your country. No need for civil rights movement after this, because if you get these 3 things right, so let's talk about them. Here we go. The first one is finish high school. The second one is get a job once you finish high school, and it's any job once you finish high school. And the third one is don't have a baby until you're married. If you do those 3 things, this is a quote, 97% of millennials who follow what has been called the success sequence, that is, who get at least a high school degree, work, and then marry before having children, in that order, are not poor by the time they reach their prime young adult years, which is from 28 to 34. 97%.
Dang, so we're both past prime then. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm so past prime.
Sorry to
And
hear
when
that.
people be talking about middle age, I'm like, I am not middle aged, bro. I'm old, because if I was middle aged, middle age for me means I'm almost going to live to 106. So that doesn't seem likely. Not given my diet and exercise behavior, that does not seem likely. But this is like, and I should say, this is, if you go to the American Enterprise Institute, the Institute for Family Studies, lots of conservative groups. You've heard this from Ian Rowe. This is part of their religion. This is part of their religion. Like, there's no such thing as racism. There's just you guys not doing these three things. And if you did these three things, almost 100% of you would never be poor again. What's wrong with that, Sharif? What's wrong with that? If the research really does tell you, which, I mean, the research is questionable, but if the research really does tell you that doing these three things means that 97% of you will never be poor, then why should we blame racism or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it still goes back to ignoring so much of the reality of how America was structured. To say just go to high school, just graduate from high school, and ignoring what your pre-K to 11th grade years look like. What's the access to a high school, right? What does a diploma from one school mean? And that a collective experience, what's that ecosystem that you go through? And what someone else is experiencing that pre-K 12th grade experience. So like, we know for a fact that a diploma from one high school and a diploma from another high school a mile away ain't the same. And not the paper is the same, maybe, but the conditions that produced that diploma that's being bestowed upon you, nah, that's not the same. So being able to ignore that, ignoring the employment rates, ignoring the lead in water, in walls, in ceilings, is ignoring all of these other things that impact what the ecosystem actually is in high school. Or even you're talking about marriage and other things. When you look at that New York Times article where it shows even black folks who are born in affluent communities, what that means afterwards, and how hard it is for them to stay there. It's not because they weren't married. It's not because they don't have a high school diploma. There are other things about access and opportunity and legacy that continue to undermine. It is like having something and having mealworms underneath it. Right on the facade, it looks fine. You open that and look at the core, and you just see mealworms and maggots eating away at everything you think was just normal. And that's what they want you to ignore the maggots and just look at the veneer, right? Imagine that sweet potato pie Thanksgiving, and inside of it is just maggots. That's what that American dream is actually looking like. And theirs is free of those maggots, and it's solid, and they can use it and continue. And yes, as you said, like there's some truths in everything. Yes, if you have a 2 household income, it's a little easier, depending on what you're actually being employed in, right? It may be easier, likely easier. It's more attention, it's more adults, intergenerational families. Yes, it can set you up in a different way than if you were out there by yourself on your own trying to struggle and raise children. So yes, there's some truth in that, but not because of the contempt that they have about why, but it's because of the community that you're trying to build. Yeah, it's no brainer. Yeah, if you're within community with others, yes, it's going to be different. If you're literate, yes, it's going to be different than if you were illiterate. But let's not act like the educational systems are equal and just, and everyone just goes through there and everyone's prepared to battle the battles that are sure to come once they graduate. And
Well,
that's how they try to portray it.
you hit on something like really important there, though. So it is very powerful and alluring for simple and simplistic people, which I find that conservatives often are very simplistic and simple people.
We the
Like
simple folks.
yeah, they're super simple.
Yeah.
They actually don't like complicated stories, especially when it costs them something.
Mm.
Um, but um, here's why I think it's like overly simplistic to the point of it being dishonest, right? So it's very powerful to say 97% of people won't be poor if they do these three things: finish high school, get a job, any job, and then don't have kids before they
Any
get
job.
married, right? Okay, that's a simple story. First of all, it's not true. So I would beg people to dig in and look at the research itself, and then look at some of the methodological problems with it. And the methodological problems with it are so interesting and complicated that that you do have to be dishonest to take this and run with it. Like it's not that it's like completely wrong or it doesn't have some, you know, some validity. It's just that you would have to be either um, fatally moronic or dishonest to actually take it and run with it like it's the thing that you should be talking about. First of all, you just mentioned the thing. So in Flint, you talked about lead in the water. Lead in the water that was known by the government, that was known by the people who run the government there, your elected leaders who systemically allowed you to keep drinking water that they themselves were drinking bottled water. They wouldn't drink that water. You're
They use
drinking
your
bottled
tax
water.
money to
It's
buy
okay.
bottled water and told you
Yes.
the water's safe. Like, I
Which is
mean,
systemic because you know
crazy.
you couldn't do that to a white community. Now, here's the problem with that. The problem is that special education rose by 300% in that community because of the lead in the water, and the lead levels was so high that it couldn't be remediated in children, meaning there was no remedy for it, right? So if you are unknowingly drinking water on your way to, I'm just going to finish high school, I'm just going to go to school, I'm just going to finish school, I'm going to work a job, and I'm not going to have any babies, but your government is literally poisoning you to the point where it is changing your cognition, which changes your ability to do well in school and in college, which changes your ability to earn money from income in a job and then buy a house. That wasn't because of your behavior. You didn't put the lead in the water. And oh, by the way, I've said it here and I'm going to keep saying it. Flint was the tip of the iceberg. There were at least 27 communities that had worse lead than Flint did. And we made a big deal out of Flint. Nationally, there are lots of these communities. Watts in Los Angeles has the same problem. And I think it was worse in Watts. That's just one small example that has big implications. If you are giving rise to 300% of special education in a community, not because they're doing anything wrong. It's not because they have single moms. It's not because they had a baby out of so-called wedlock. And oh, by the way, if you search Google, the big oracle, what you will find is you'll find some stories of two parents with a baby in the car who have OD'd in the front of the seat. Actually, more than one of these stories you will find because heroin and opioids and other addictions are so sweeping that that they're even hitting two-parent households, for instance. So Madonna is a single parent with multiple kids, and you have this other parent who, this other two-parent married family that are ODing in the front of the car with the baby strapped in the baby seat in the back. Which baby is better off? The single mom who is got all the money and the resources to send her kid to good schools, because in the end, what we want to prove is that marriage is the problem. Marriage is the difference. Having kids out of wedlock, not resources. Resources don't make the difference. Um, I'm making a long point here, just basically
No,
to say
and who
that
wins with that
that
framework? Who wins with that framework, right?
well, and this absurd point that I just made is you can have two trash parents who are who are married and college educated, even who are putting you in danger and in harm's way, and you can have a single parent who has resources to get you into the right schools and on the right track and whatever. And then you have to say, well, wait a second, then is it marriage or was it the resources? Because it seems to me in that this example I just gave, marriage wasn't the end all be all. The resources were the end all be all, right? Loving, caring people in your life who have the ability to send you to schools that put you ahead in life and get you what you need in your early years to thrive. That comes down to resources. So maybe it's not just marriage. Anyways, does any of that sound wrong to you? That um, that this is just way too simplistic, that we do need to teach our kids the reality of America, which is you have to pay attention to your government. You have to pay attention to statistics. Like, no one cared about lead in the water until it became a story, right? Nobody cared about stop and frisk until stop and frisk research came out. Are we supposed to not teach our teenagers about the research and data that came out around stop and frisk? Are we not supposed to teach them about their rights when they encounter police officers? Or maybe even you talk oftentimes, Sharif, about original sources and documents or whatnot.
Mhm.
Is it wrong to teach kids about the statistics that govern their lives, even when those statistics are very negative?
No, I think that's part of the education. I mean, if we're not, they're not truly being educated. We're, kind of curating a very particular narrative that ends up where they, very easily for them to ingest like anti-blackness because so many of the messages from the conservatives is an anti-black stance, right? And so when
Hmm.
we look
Hmm.
at again, what's their intent, what's their impact, where are they drawing from? Is it love or contempt? Sean Hannery and all and those folks, they're not drawing from love for black folks, So it's like we have to really be able to share with students, and you can look at these things, those three things, and then look at talking about the BPP. Look at their 10-point platform, and look at the difference between the 10-point platform and what they're saying, and what those three things that the conservatives are saying about like this is all you need for success. Ignore everything else. It's kind of like the Jedi mind trick. Ignore everything. Just focus on these three things. And we just have to be more critical in our analysis and have the self determination for self improvement, for organizing, for community. Uh, and I think it takes such faith in government to believe that that's all you need, right? Like, are those three simple things the level of again dreaming, blindfolded, eyes closed, blind faith in a government that's proven over and over and over again, like we will slit your throat and your baby too. From
Hmm.
infected blankets to infected water, we don't care about you. And so to ignore all of that and just say, I have faith in them, in the system, is beyond stupid. I mean, it is outright, like yeah. I mean, it's ludicrous to even think about like all the history and all the examples of everything, and they it's so bad, right? Like it's they might keep it a secret for a little while. Then after a while, it's like, yeah, we've now opened up these files. Yeah, here's all this shit we did to you.
Yeah,
But
right.
like I'm just like, wait a minute, like you actually did this, you documented it, you know, but we should just still have faith in you because there's a dream. Like, yeah, dream is when you sleep.
A dream will kill your ass.
Yeah, wake up.
Yeah, yeah, like, a
That's why you
dream
got to
will
stay
really
woke,
kill
bro.
your ass. Yeah, yeah, stay woke. Stay woke. I prefer to be awake, it's my Bayesianess. I prefer to be awake, but yeah, I get what you're coming from. I get where you're coming from, brother man. Like, so when you just mentioned the 5 or the 10-point plan, number 5 of the 10-point plan is we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society, which is something that's under fire. First of all, let me just say this: the American dream and the Negropeans who push that on us as the saving grace for us, they want us to go to sleep. So the number 5 of the 10-point plan doesn't happen, which is we want a true education for our people that exposes us to the true nature of this decadent society that we live in. And we want education that teaches us our true history and our role in that present day society. So our Negropeans have joined the 1776 crew, whereas I had problems with the 1619 people, I have problems with the 76 crew, in that they don't want us to have a true picture of this decadent American society or our true history or our true role in it. They want to lift up all the finer points, the lighter points, the good news out of all of it, and they don't want the bad news. Well, here's what worked in my life. I had Black people in my life outside of schools who were putting things into my hands and demanding that I study and read. Some of those things were like, you will always hear me mention COINTELPRO because that was like one of the first big books that I had to read. And it was amazing to me what was being taught to me in those books about my government that never was even touched in school during the day, to the point where I had contempt for school, to the point where I would go into school history and sociology type classes and
I
have
can only
contempt for the
imagine.
teacher. I had
I can only
absolute
imagine
contempt.
you as a as a student in that class.
Bruh, all you have to do is read the book on the FBI files on Martin Luther King Jr., or any of the information around COINTELPRO. And yes, please look at original documents on any of those things, and then match it up with what you are being taught in school, the juvenile baby food that you're being taught in school. When these Republicans and conservatives and just basically evil people are trying to convince the American public that CRT is taking over the schools and we're indoctrinating kids to hate America and all that type of stuff. So the answer to that is to whitewash the curriculum. It's to tell the both sides of the Holocaust. It's to get rid of Birmingham letter from a Birmingham jail. It's to start in Texas. It's to take away the requirement that the KKK be taught as a moral wrong and a moral evil, stuff like that. You can see where there's a desire to keep us happy, dreaming, and stupid, right? Like by whitewashing the real information. I don't know that you want a kid like me, like where you're going to make me have contempt for school by showing me the truth. But the contempt that I had wasn't for school. It was for what wasn't taking place in the school. They were not teaching us these other books that were being put in my hand about the true story of the FBI, the true story of the CIA, the true story of what we did to destabilize other countries and other governments, while we're having all this flowery language around democracy and freedom and patriotism and, best country in the world and all that type of
We export
nonsense. And what you're
democracy.
suggesting.
You export bombs.
You
You
know what
export
America
misery.
exports? America exports weapons and porn. That's the United States' two biggest imports to the world.
But it's
Bombs
cloaked
and
in
porn.
the red, white, and blue, though.
It's cloaked in the red, white, and blue because we're the
covered.
greatest nation that there ever been, or whatnot. So in some ways, again, going back to our favorite movie, Sharif, at least mine, The Matrix, it's the red pill or the blue pill. The idea that it's better to be in the Matrix and blissfully ignorant, right? That it's all fake and that it's all game, is better for some people than being Neo and getting out of the Matrix and seeing, nah, this is crap, right?
For a lot of people.
For a lot of people.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. But I do think, this show was really thinking more about, and it's to, put it back to you again, just if we want our kids to be highly agentic, like Charles Cole always talks about, and to believe that they can succeed and believe that they have in them what it takes to become successful, it doesn't seem like we have to choose out of these two. But if we had to choose out of one that basically sticks with the mantra of work hard and keep your head down and believe in yourself and you could do it, versus the second one, which is, trust but verify, or look at the real numbers. Can you see the allure of going with the first one?
I mean, when you look at it from afar, even up close, like you can see this is why people do that. This is why people, as it was portrayed in the Matrix, the boy was like, listen, I know this steak ain't real and I'm gonna enjoy pretending that I'm eating it. And so if that's your wiring, if that's your kind of the framework that you want to operate in, that's one thing. But to try to portray that this was the reality of so many other folks is a falsehood. And I think when you look at all of their strategy of these conservatives, some of the things that they do that play into how they go about, this is why they always want to show this singular person, black person who made it, right? Because they can say, all right, yeah, that person made it, but we're talking about the millions other. We're talking about the 8 million black children. You keep showing me 5 folks. Or when they show, this whole idea of, just finish school and they didn't go to college. So you don't need to, because if you say that, as Cole mentioned last time on A Black Hand, if you say that and you're teaching first grade and talking about they don't need to go to college, and you're in your head is like, Bill Gates ain't go to college. Right? You're like, okay, Bill Gates was also from a family that could afford him a computer back then too, to play with. imagine that 2 household poor family, in the black community buy a computer that's just a kid, oh, just play with that and just explore. Right? There's so many other conditions that manifest itself. But they're very excited to show this singular person and tell you, don't be distracted by the masses. Like that's what they're telling you. Don't be distracted by the policies. Don't be distracted by the conditions of poor people, working class people, the working poor, all of it. Ignore. Focus on this shiny coin or person. Focus on that. Right. And so for me, like I understand why, like you can see them doing it. They're making active choices to ignore certain things. But even their own children are saying, like, yo, this is not reality, right? This is not, we need to hear more. We need to see more. We see children growing up with angry and frustrated by, yo, you were selling us a lie. All this time, you were selling us a lie. And the sad part about humanity is even when we have that in our youth, sometimes when we become adults, we want to protect a lie instead of protecting the children.
Yeah, I think it's always we're in a tougher situation though, Sharif, because it's always harder to sell a complicated story than a nuanced. I mean, a nuanced and complicated story than a simple one.
Oh
And we
yeah,
like to tell our kids simple stories, right?
yeah, that wins elections. Short phrase, super
Yeah.
simple. Apply it to stick it on bumper sticker on every single thing, even on your kid's forehead. Like this is all you got to think about, and not the other parts. But we were blessed with as human beings with brains that can analyze and look through logic and look through patterns, identify patterns. To
Mm.
ignore that, to short circuit the way that our brains are wired, to fall for the okey doke is a travesty, and we have to like extract ourselves from those type of conversations.
I think you just made the case for the second one. Whether or not we should be teaching the American dream versus the American reality was kind of like a rhetorical point for
Hmm.
you and I, like on
Hmm.
this conversation, to have that as
Right.
a frame for the conversation. It's a little bit rhetorical. Just in that, I know we're both going to like come down on the fact that we have to teach our kids what is, not what we want it to be.
Hmm.
Right. And we're going to be dead and gone at some point. So hopefully, hope to God that we have provided them with the tools to decode oppression,
Hmm.
like to understand their world the same way that our ancestors actually gave us what they could to help us understand the world that we were in. We could, there were people on the plantations in slavery who were part of working with master to tell the slaves, you got it good here. Master's giving you good clothes. Master's giving you food. You get the scraps. He's better than the other masters. There's other masters, but yours is the good one, out of all of them. No matter how brutal or jacked up the circumstances were on those particular plantations, there were some of our own people that were participating in the myth making of the situation, basically to keep slaves, to basically to keep enslaved people
You got the best
comfortable with their
life that a
social system.
subhuman could wish for.
You have the best
Be
subhuman
quiet.
life. That's it. That's a great point. So what Black conservatives, Negropeans, sellouts, Black exceptionalists, people who feel like I made it and I did so well and blah blah blah. I mean, listen, Clarence Thomas had an unremarkable career, and he was too young to be a Supreme Court justice, but they needed a Black person, and he got it for that. And then he was against affirmative action, right? Half of these Negroes that we were talking about in the
Close the
conservative side
door.
of things, yeah, close
Close
the
the
door, right?
door.
Half of these Negroes that we're talking about that love to sit in white rooms and talk about how we should sell the success sequence or whatnot are talking straight up mostly to white audiences, or they're talking to Black rooms where they're all the onlys, meaning they're all the onlys, the one BE, the one Black employee in white organizations that are meant to be sent out like sentinels and sell us and sell our communities on this cultural suicide, which is basically, just drink down the American kind of lead water, let it kill you, and then blame yourself for the ill effects of the lead that you drank down, right?
Man, I mean, and it's such a great point because some of these Negro peers, as you said, they really think that their meritocracy got them there, and everyone else is dumb. They think like I am the only smart one out of this group or this school or this
If I can
neighborhood.
only convince the rest of the Black people to be like me,
Yeah, then like
I'm the
I'm
model.
the shiny one. They
Yeah.
can't see like nah. They left the door ajar just enough for you, and they actually you should be even more scared because they actually chose you for a different reason than what you think.
Here's the challenge I have for them. Start disagreeing with those white people that are putting you up on the
In
pedestal
those
and watch
spaces
what
that they let
happens.
you in.
In those
Exactly.
spaces that they let you in and watch what happens. The one reason why you are in those rooms as the only Negro, and they're saying, now see, this guy gets it. Oh my God, this guy gets it. Like, I love it when he talks. So you trying to make a salient point in some discussion, and they're like pointing to this Negro P and going like, well, I mean, listen, he's black and he gets it, and you don't, right?
Mhm.
And you have to ask yourself, well, how come he has no black followers? How come he has no black readership? And the black readership that he does have are equally as stupid and simple as he is. And listen, I love some of these folks who like to get out here and pretend like they're exceptional. Half of them are black and mediocre, but are being lifted up because they're saying what wants to be said. Right? Your Candace Owenses, your Diamonds and Silks, we can make fun of them, but there's an intellectual version of them sitting in some of these white think tanks. And you go down and you scroll down all the pictures, and you see white face, white face, white face, white face, white face, white. Oh, there's a fly in the milk. Oh, there's this one black picture. Oh, he must be like exceptional in some way, shape, or form. Wow. Now I'm not talking about anybody specific. So if y'all listening to me, I am just saying that there's enough of these examples to be pointed out as being the real deal, and I'm not here for it, right? So you
Mhm.
Negropeans, you beige myth makers, people who want to come sell. Like, listen, it is fine for you to do that to get your hustle on, but let's not be unreal with each other. Let's be straight up and real with each other. I know what you're doing. I see you. I see your hustle. Your hustle has always existed. Your hustle is not new. That's why you sitting up in all the banquets and in all the right presentations and getting invited to speak in all the right places. We have some of that in education. We have some of that in school choice, the school choice movement. I have one or two people that I have respect for and that I like, who actually are the one Negro that many of these rooms know that they can bring, because you're never going to be dangerous. You're
Mhm.
never going to disagree. You're going to let people say the most ridiculous shit about your own people. You're going to let them push to remove voting rights from your people, and sit with people who are not only not attending to the negative systemic factors that are killing your people, but you're actually going to sit with them when they're making it worse, like by passing laws and changing structures that are for sure eliminating opportunities for us to learn and to earn and to live. But you happy as hell. You're just happy to be at the happy hour with them. You're happy that they pat you on the head. You're happy that you love all the same music that they love, and they treat you like you're one of them. You love it.
Mhm.
You love it so much because you're a sucker. Anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go there, but we
No,
need
man. I mean,
to reality is different than the dream. And what I just said to me is our reality. It's not
yeah.
the dream.
Yeah, and so many folks who are holding up this, American nightmare for the masses. These, as you said, they're not dangerous in those settings. They're more dangerous to their people than the folks who are oppressing them. These docile intellectuals who make it safe for those who stake the barbed wires. Um, but not making it safe for those who are being held back by those barbed wires. And I think this is a part of. I think this is the danger of only focusing on like education for social mobility. I think there's a danger in that because it becomes this individualized, almost this rabid, uh, a carnivorous, attempt to do one thing and forget everything else, right? And so social mobility without community uplifting, community love is, I think it's a really dangerous, hazardous road to tread. Any social mobility that ignores community as a whole, and I love what you said about making sure that our children, our future generations, our grandchildren are able to decode oppression. Because just like everything else, things continue to evolve.
Hmm. Hmm.
They say the solar system as it was 100 years ago is not what it looks like now, and not what it's going to look like 100 years from now, right? That's continuing to evolve and shape and morph ever so slightly that you might not be able to notice it. But we know for a fact that this idea of like a group oppressing another group, a group amassing power and wielding it against other folks who do not have that power, that is going to continue. And so if our children can't decode that because we've raised them to dream and not raised them to think, that's problematic. And thinking doesn't mean that you don't have
Mm,
aspirations. It means that
right.
your eyes are open as you are developing these aspirations.
Yeah, if you and I were about to run a race and we're on different trails, and I know that your trail is concrete and smooth, and I know somebody else's is through the woods and rocky, and I don't tell them that. I just send them both out like they're going to be runners, and I don't tell them the terrain. I
Mhm.
don't give them like an app. I don't give them Google Maps. I don't tell them anything else. Just hey, go run the race.
There's a crater 5 steps ahead. you know?
Like jump over the crater. Listen, I actually believe that we landed where I thought we would, which is the American reality is the thing that we should teach our kids about. And part of that is actually arming them with information to beat the anti-black algorithm of the American system. America is a system, right? And
Yeah.
there is an algorithm in that system that's an anti-black algorithm. And if you are not a racial scientist and you don't understand systems, then you can just go ahead and be enslaved if you want
I'm
to.
so glad you
Right?
said that,
That's
Chris,
you
because
know.
it's so important. Because so many people, especially, the fact that I was able to grow up overseas and you would hear this, like some of the propaganda was America, yeah, America has warts, but America is an idea. America is a system.
It's a
It's not just an
system.
idea, because even if you trace back to that original idea, it was like everybody else, F you. This is for us.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then it built a system to protect that idea.
Hmm.
This whole thing that it's an idea for all and for everyone. Like, since when? Like,
That
when?
itself is a program.
Yeah,
That itself is a program and it's a dumb program, but America is a system with viruses in the system, with algorithms in the system, and with predictable, trends that you can watch. Where if you are a person who has pattern recognition, which is a skill for Black people in the United
that's how
States,
you
then you will
decode it.
understand that's how you start decoding. So when I tell you that Newsday did a study of real estate in Long Island, and they looked at 5,763 home listings. They had hundreds of meetings that they recorded with real estate agents, and they sent out similarly situated Black and white people to buy a house through the real estate system of Long Island, like a state, a place. What they found was overwhelmingly there was a difference in what listings would be shown to people, what neighborhoods would be shown to them, what they were asked for before they could even be shown a place, what the cost of things would be for them. It was an algorithm. It's an anti-black algorithm, right? When it comes down to if you sell your house and you're Black, if you remove all of the Black pictures out of your house and replace them with white pictures, that the appraisal goes up. The system of appraising houses changes for you. Um, that's one small part of the system that you could replicate that same type of study in education, in law, in commerce. Dr. Francis Cress Wessling told you this years ago. In every area of life activity, commerce, law, education, whatever, you can find this algorithm. You can find this problem that I just described. You can't find it if you have people wiping away the tools to find it. The reason they hate critical race theory is not because of the theory. They hate it because it's a tool and an instrument for decoding your oppression, for finding where in the system, hard numbers, give me statistics, show me the algorithm. Well, they don't want you to learn that. And they definitely don't want your kids learning that. So if it comes down to the dream or the reality, I'm sorry. I want my kids to be awake. You can do what you want with yours. You can tell them about this dream. But like I said earlier, there's a conservative version of this. If you behave the right way, good things will come. And
Mhm,
there's a Malcolm version of that same thing. Yes, we should be behaving in certain ways,
mhm,
including how we spend our money,
mhm.
how we benefit from school and education, which schools we go to, all of that. What did Malcolm say about education? It's
Passport to the future.
passport to the future, right?
And he's
So
like,
that should be our
educate so
American
you can
dream.
defeat the system, right? Like, that's why. Do
Yeah.
all of this so that the system that was built to oppress you and make you second class or third class citizens. So you can defeat that. The other side, they're not talking about anything but protecting an oppressive system, which is oppressive in nature in itself.
Or the thing you always say, improving their position within it. They're not trying to end white supremacy. They're trying to improve their position within it.
They're
Right.
like, screw that. Let me hold the whip. You know, don't whip me. Let me hold it. And then
Somebody
we all
got to
good.
beat y'all.
We allies now.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, listen, brother, we are over time, but I appreciate you as always. Once again, man, this has been a riveting
Same here.
discussion.
Thank you. No, appreciate it. Can't wait to read the comments. Thanks to the audience. Shout out and happy birthday, BPP. BPP and me. I should, use KRS
Snick,
beat and then do
you
that.
know,
Snick, happy birthday.
happy birthday
All
to all
these
y'all.
vanguards and heroes, and may we continue to raise a generation that can continue that work of decoding the oppression.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
that.
Do you have any updates about your work that people should know about?
No, we just put out a report with Teach Plus. We spoke about that last week.
Okay.
And the next thing, annual National Black Men Educator Conference, BMEC 2021, is November 4th and 5th. Hope to see everyone out there. If you're a school and district or organizational leaders, sponsors groups of your folks to come participate. Amir Davis is doing a fantastic job with that, and looking forward to the 4th and the 5th. So thanks a
I
lot.
love it. Sharif, as always, is building Black power. He's building power, period, that will, like every other version of Black power in the United States, has made the country better. That's how I said it earlier. You're welcome, America, for all the things that Black power gave you that you're benefiting from now. And this is more of it. We will all benefit from having more Black folks in education, specifically more Black males in education, but just a general focus on it from us and our people. So the work you do, Sharif, thank you, brother. You're always keeping the focus there. And you're keeping it real. You don't go out there and do crazy things like, you're not saying the stuff I say. This is why this show works, right? We got to have some interplay here. We need to give me some balance. My team would get after me at Brightbeam, my team, which I love. Brightbeam is doing great work at all times to shine the light on the needs of children, especially children that live at the margins of success in our society.
Bring the
And
noise,
we're not doing
y'all.
it
Bring
from
the
a
noise.
deficit lens. Yeah. So I would be remiss to say, to not say that next Wednesday, October 20th, we are having a town hall meeting. That's the third in a series of town hall meetings where we are talking with activists and with experts around what should we be making as people of color and grassroots communities of accountability, assessments, all this stuff that we hear talked about in the broader educational debate that oftentimes leaves us out. So we are next Wednesday the 20th, we have a town hall. It's called Building Mutual Accountability Between School Systems and Families. It's at 12 p.m. Eastern time. I always have to remember the Eastern, and I live in the middle of America, and I'm the boss, so I don't know why we use Eastern time, Brightbeam. But 11 a.m. Central and 12 p.m. Eastern time. Again, it's called Building Mutual Accountability Between School Systems and Families next week. So hope you all can join us for that. Thank you for joining us today, giving us your brunch time on Friday to talk about education. This has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but at least you're freer than you were when we started this discussion. Love, peace, and joy to all of you. Let's do